when something seems so far away, like retirement has got nothing to do with age. It's got everything to do with income. And so you think when you're younger, like one day when I get older, I might retire. But when you've got the cash flow happening, what is retirement? Right. It's not just about hitting retirement age. It's being able to buy your time back and do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it. And the earlier you get on that investment journey by strategically planning your investments, whether that's in super or whether it's outside of super, or better yet, both, because of the tax benefits of superannuation, get on with it now. And I find that, there's a flexion point. People ignore the prospect of retirement and super. One day I'll get around to it. And then they hit that flexion point and they realize that they've left their run later and they're having to chase it really hard, which is not fun. And you start to do crazy things. You take risks you shouldn't, all that kind of jazz. So it's something, if you get onto it early and keep contributing all the way through, it's just a silent savings scheme that's there for you. And there's nothing bad about that. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are looking at the key traps to avoid if you are in your 30s. Now, if you're listening to this and you're not in your 30s, there's plenty of good content to take away as always. So don't take notes. Make sure you take plenty of action. See you in the show. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitch Olarenshaw.
Bit of a light, fun one installed today, AB. We're going to talk about the 5 money traps to avoid in your 30s. So a few decades ago for yourself, maybe 4 or 5 decades ago, and then for me, just on the horizon. So I've kind of got both perspectives here, right?
Well done. Nice one. You're boosting my self-esteem.
Terrible segue, I know.
If I go back through my parchment diary from way back then, for sure. Yeah, indeed, a few moons ago, but a very, very important decade. I'd argue probably one of the most defining ones for people. You finish school/uni, you start your career in 20s. Maybe for most people, their 20s are about really finding themselves, exploring life a little bit, getting started on the investment journey. But the rewards from that really start to layer up and compound in your 30s, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think, a lot starts to change in your 30s. You're probably at a point in your career where you're starting to earn more money. I think there's that critical point. You could be, say, 5 to 7 years in your job, but also long-term partner, having kids potentially as well. I know a few decades after that for all that, but nonetheless an important time for most people, right?
It is, and it's the sort of grown-up phase. If you're male, you sort of think your frontal lobe doesn't really start finishing itself off until at least 25. So you're sort of starting to go into that adult phase where there are responsibilities. And, you mentioned some big chapter changes, committed relationship, getting married, having a family. Hopefully you've already got started in the property market. I know you obviously have. I know I most certainly did. My wife did. In fact, most people I know that were successful started that in their 20s. So they've got that asset behind them. And it's those next couple of moves. More income coming in the door can be a very tricky thing to manage. I know it sounds like a first world problem, but heck, very, very important to acknowledge and understand that.
Well, trap number 1. So these are our 5 traps to avoid in your 30s. I think that trap number 1 is exactly that, which is lifestyle inflation. My dad was pretty resolute on this as I was even a teenager, that as you earn more, you don't necessarily need to spend more. And that is a major danger for most people.
It's a huge one. And to give you an example, socks are probably the best example of that.
Oh, no. What are you wearing? What do we got? Mont Blanc or something down there? Or Dior?
Xenia, I think these are.
Okay.
But
Kmart for me.
There you go. That's a smart play, right? So you go through the different chapters. So let's say you've got... like you say, let's just pick the examples in front of us. So you can wear Kmart socks, and over a period of time, you might move. I don't think they are Kmart, knowing you.
No,
your sock game, no, they are pretty.
MJ Bale.
There we go.
About middle of the road.
Your sock game's pretty reasonable there.
Thank you.
So you get Kmart, and it might be sort of cotton and elastane socks, and then you go, no, I just want pure cotton, then you want wool, or you might go from sort of Kmart to Country Road to Boss to Xenia, or whatever it might be. Okay. Yeah. And they're all socks. They all do the same job. There's just one difference. One is 3 pairs for $10 and the other one is $200 for a pair of socks. So, yes, they are very different. The margin of utility in those is different. The decision-making process, the buying process is different. And if you have lifestyle inflation where you're spending, I'm earning more, therefore I should go to a different restaurant, spend more on wine, sit in a different part of the plane, have a different type of car, have more expensive socks, you're not getting ahead. You're chasing debt. You're effectively in a situation where even though your disposable income is increasing, your quality of life isn't, which is such a massive trap. Where's all my money going? And it's probably going out the door with spending that probably isn't best serving you.
Yeah, I think I totally agree. I think there's a balance because at some point you have to change. Like if you're doing really well and you've improved your situation quite a lot, I've always worked on once I hit a critical point, then this becomes a reality rather than a dream.
That's like a rebasing. It's like a logarithmic scale, if you will. So if it gets there, this now becomes the baseline.
That's right.
And I get that totally. And then when I get to here, this becomes my new baseline.
Without going silly, though, because ultimately, if you can earn more and spend the exact same amount, you're going to be better off because then you've got more money to invest.
So I agree 100%. And it's a tricky one for me to dive into this because for decades, I wasn't particularly, or at least in my mind's eye, I didn't think I was a victim of lifestyle inflation because I was very, very good at my investing, but also my income was robust, and so too were my investments. So surreptitiously, it does creep up. And that disposable spending can very, very easily chip up, and you don't necessarily have a lot to show for it. So it is something to be very minded of, but at the same time, you do have to reward yourself for successes in life too. So it might be if you're in a property cycle, every time you get another property added to your portfolio, there's a discretionary dollar amount that you've given yourself, if that's the way your mind works, that can go towards a purchase of some shape, form, size. That's your reward for getting to that next rung on the investment ladder.
Yeah.
And I'm always very minded that any of those sort of rewards should be paid for out of the income from your investing, not your principal or your income.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think like a big thing for me, and I'm sure for yourself as well, when you get to that part when you're heading towards your 30s, you start to figure out what it is that you like in life.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's going to be spend time with friends, family, exercise, good food, whatever it might be. So all the other stuff really is just flavor on the outskirts that you can live with or live without. It doesn't necessarily matter.
And it can be driven by recognition too. Is that you're buying this for how it's going to make you feel? I had this conversation with my father.
I remember this Aston Martin story, right?
Which I was in my 30s, so it ties it back to that. And he said, "Why did you buy this? Is it for you? Or is it for how you think people are going to treat you differently?" And it's a really good
What was your answer? You can be honest here.
It was both, actually.
Yeah,
if I have a foot in both camps. It's something I wanted from when I was a kid. I love James Bond, as all kids do. And it was something that, it is something that I'd set as a goal for sure.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the coin, it didn't upset me too much whenever I went out and went anywhere. Instead of valet parking, you just park at the front of the joint and they just leave your car there and things like that. So there's a level of convenience. There's a good prop to have too. As in my bachelor days too, I'm not going to be shy about admitting now I've got no game, so I have to resort to props and all those things. So yeah, it was a combination of the two. And it's really funny when you get into your psychology of what actually makes you tick, because if you have a void in your soul of unhappiness, it doesn't matter what you buy, it's not going to be enough to fill that void. The actual answer is in yourself to work out why you're not happy.
That's right.
And retail therapy, there are people around me in my life that are very good at retail therapy. I don't understand it, but everyone's different. We're all wired differently. That said, I like spending money on nice things, which I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also earned it and I can afford it.
That's right. And in that scenario, it's okay. I think it's when things start to become a little bit ridiculous where, as you use the sock example, do you necessarily need expensive socks or a car or whatever when they all do the same thing?
A lot of my 30s were full of traveling experience. It was a very decadent bachelor decade for me. I got married when I was 41. And so that decade was quite decadent, but I'd also probably skewed my life a little bit than a lot of people too, because in my 20s I'd attained a very significant level of financial success. So I'd sort of moved the game forward a little bit. So that was maybe that was my premature midlife crisis.
There you go. I think, and an important thing to remember here too, is that if you don't necessarily need it and you can live without it, live without it, because ultimately if you can use those funds to invest, and assuming that anyone listening to this podcast has an ambition to be wealthy, you will be far wealthier later on.
Yep. 100%. One of my good friends, my former Pilates instructor, good buddy of mine, a chap by the name of Rodney, who's an outstanding person, had some money, put it into gold probably 5-6 years ago.
Probably done quite well.
Needed to do other things too. Could have bought a newer car, could have done a few different things, but put it into gold. And you think about what he's done on the back of that by shutting the door on personal consumption and said, I would get a different car or spend it on the house or go on a trip. Instead, just whacked it into the yellow metal You go, okay, interesting play, and bang, here you go. Over that period of time, it's probably tripled in value. And now it can have all those other things and also some good investing. And
that's right.
That's someone that's playing the long game and playing the game for the right reasons. So big shout out to him, good friend.
Nice. Well, exploring the long game a little bit. Point number 2, I think in your 30s as well, you're getting older, but you're not quite that old, and that's ignoring super. Right?
Easy trap to fall into. One day, someday, I'll get around to retirement.
That's right.
It's a challenging one. That it's when something seems so far away, like retirement. Retirement has got nothing to do with income. It's got everything to do with nothing to do with age. It's got everything to do with income. And so you think when you're younger, like one day when I get older, I might retire. But when you've got the cash flow happening, what is retirement? Right. It's not just about hitting retirement age. It's being able to buy your time back and do what you want to do, when you want to do it, with whom you want to do it. And the earlier you get on that investment journey by strategically planning your investments, whether that's in super or whether it's outside of super, or better yet, both, because of the tax benefits of superannuation, get on with it now. And I find that, there's a flexion point. People ignore the prospect of retirement and super. One day I'll get around to it. And then they hit that flexion point and they realize that they've left their run later and they're having to chase it really hard, which is not fun. And you start to do crazy things. You take risks you shouldn't, all that kind of jazz. So it's something, if you get onto it early and keep contributing all the way through, it's just a silent saving scheme that's there for you. And there's nothing bad about that.
Yeah. And for any of our listeners here, go and listen to our podcast that came out a week or two ago, which was the tips as we head into tax time too. Super contributions early makes a big difference down the line for a very small inconvenience now in your life.
Well, I don't know if it's even an inconvenience. It just takes it into an enforced savings scheme that you can't get your paws on for all.
That's right.
And that's how it should be.
That's right. Okay, point number 3, pitfall to avoid in your 30s, too much bad debt. As I say, probably earning more, change of life scenario, probably doing quite well, hopefully. Very tempting to go and get new cars and new toys, right?
Absolutely. Again, go back to any lifestyle asset that you purchase should be purchased through the proceeds of your investing. So if you haven't got your act together and actually started investing and you're therefore not making any money, you've got to stop that bad habit. And one of the best ways of doing it is to have a permission gateway, I suppose, which is that I can only buy colorful stuff based on the return from my investment. So if I haven't done any investing, there's no return, therefore I can't have it. It's a really good closed feedback loop to say no. People don't listen to that. That's why they're in the financial position that they perhaps are in. But that ability to buy a frivolous thing, we'll get a jet ski because we live on the water now. It's like, okay, I've done that too, and it's a great waste of money. It's great fun for a couple of months while you're using it, and then that's it. It's like the novelty's worn off and you're looking for the next thing. If you're in your 30s, chances are you might be starting a family. If you're in a conventional relationship, you've got things to think about there too in terms of the running costs of a family, school fees, different types of car to move your kids around. My wife and I now, we've got 6. There aren't that many cars actually that are 8-seaters.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So you've got all this sort of stuff that you need to do that's coming up, and spending it on you've got to grow out of that phase. Yeah,
I mean, the average age for a first home buyer in Australia is 36 years old. Right?
When did that happen?
Right? So, if we're talking people in their 30s, now is the time where they're probably going to start, based on statistics, looking at buying their first property. So saving for a house and for real assets versus buying cars and toys is crunch time, right?
I'm struggling to get past that. I actually didn't know that was the average age, and that is a shockingly bad statistic. And there'll be plenty of reasons why, and I understand that. You go, the market is expensive and all the rest of it. If you're 36 and your reason for not getting in the market is too expensive to get in, what were you doing 10 years ago when it was cheap to get in at 26? And you go, who buys a house when they're 26? Well, I know you've got several and you're not 26. I look at my own circumstance and how old I was when I bought my very first property in central London. I look at my wife, who was 21 when she bought her first house, and you go, oh, it's all right, you guys might earn lots of money. My sister-in-law, who is a nurse working for Queensland Health, not the highest paid profession, which is shameful in itself that nurses aren't paid more, bought her first property in her mid-20s. It is possible to do if it's part of what the game plan is. And if you've been busy focused on other stuff and it's 36 and you get into the party, it's really hard.
Yeah.
And they go into a rental market where to get a family home, if that's what you need, is going to be costing you, depending on where you are in the country, $1,000, $1,500 a week to find something to rent, which is way more than what the mortgage would have been if you're able to buy it.
That's right.
You've got to be getting onto this early. 36, man, I had no idea. Apologies if I'm on a rant on that, but it's so easy to find excuses for not doing something. Oh, it's easy for you, or you should have. you got to own your own decision making. What did you do? Everyone in life is, I'm on a rant now, I'm going to be on the weave here, but
production team's looking at us.
Everybody is where they are in life right now as a direct result of the decisions that they've made in their life up until that point in time. So what decisions did you make that stopped you from getting into the property market younger when it was cheaper and more affordable?
100%. Yep.
And own that and learn from it. Don't make that mistake again.
And don't buy silly assets like expensive cars when you don't necessarily need them, right?
I've been through a very interesting period personally over the last 3 or 4 weeks, and my wife and I have been living in a hotel for the last month for as a direct result of that set of circumstance that we're in. Nothing. Anyway, we've been living in a hotel and looking around outside of the environment that we normally live in and seeing how people spend money, and you wonder why people are in such a difficult position financially, and it's just poor decision making, which is a result of maybe a lack of financial literacy or financial education. Good job we're running podcasts like this to help people, but you can see why people are in the circumstance. And you look at, okay, you possibly a smoker or not, which I think how much is a packet of cigarettes now, like $50-$60 or something ridiculous like that.
To be honest,
you've got enough money for cigarettes. You've got the latest brand new iPhone. You've got a great pair of Nike kicks you're wearing, but you've got no assets.
Yeah.
How?
Bad debt. Well, not that that's debt, but bad spending habits, right?
And there'll be debt behind it. There'll be a credit card bill there. There'll be Afterpay lurking in the background. And so you cannot let those bad debt figures creep up. It doesn't sound fun, but fun is when you can do whatever you want to do when you want to do it because you've taken the time to build an asset to be able to buy your time back. That doesn't happen by buying frivolous lifestyle stuff. You've just got to knuckle down. Unashamed plug.
Yeah, I'm 100%.
It's what it's all about. It's just getting to grips with that.
Yeah.
So bad debt, terrible.
Number 4 is delaying investing. Now, we speak about the notion of your 20s being a time for exploration, maybe party, travel, fun, and that's all fine because often people have that objective in their 20s to have all the fun stuff. That's fine. By the time you get to your 30s, though, it's time. So saving to invest to set up your life and your family forever is where the game's at, but a lot of people delay that.
It's interesting. The thing when you talk about investing that people always think about is you got to have the money to do that. Investing is rather like a fire. A fire is obviously heat, it's oxygen, it's fuel. They're the 3 things. Take any one of those away and the fire goes out. Investing is not dissimilar. You've got to have some money for sure, but the most important asset you have is time. Getting started early means time is a servant and working for you. Everyone's heard of compound interest. Your investments are compounding, they're working for you. If you leave your run late and you don't have time working for you, well, if it's not working for you, it's working against you. And the later you leave it, the less compounding you're going to have, and you'll be miles behind where you could be just by that extra delay, whether it's a year, 6 months, a week, a day. The best time was yesterday, if not the day before. And it's so easy to push it down the line. When I get back from there, when I've had this trip, when I've discovered myself, or when I found out what life really means, get on with it. Go search around the world, but get your money working first.
Yeah, and start small. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Even
regular saver into an ETF. Look at companies like Raise,
spaceships, same thing.
Anything, small amounts of dollars you change, just going in there, compounding for you.
Every time you get paid, stick it into an index ETF, for example. That way you don't have to worry about it, and long term you're going to do okay out of it. And it doesn't have to be complex. It's not a big end of town thing. It can be done very simply.
Couldn't agree with you more. You just get on with it. Get time working for you. Simple as that. And then, maybe I'm out of touch and you don't know what it's like for the game plan in life hasn't changed. It really hasn't. Just get started early, commit to it and see it out.
Now, last but not least, this is an interesting one, different perspectives on this, and that's getting FOMO. And what I mean by that is you start to get to your 30s, probably a lot of your colleagues / peer group is doing okay. Others maybe not. You then start to do unnecessary things like take risks that you don't necessarily need to take as such, which can put you in a bad spot long term. What are your thoughts? Yeah,
benchmarking is always tricky, and it's good to have a peer group that's kicking goals because it's the velocity of that group you included is going to get dragged along behind it. And equally, it's quite comforting when you look at the other end of that peer group and that aren't doing so well as I go, actually, relatively, I'm doing quite well. You can't benchmark. You've got to ask, how are you doing with yourself? How do you feel in yourself as to where you're at? Are you content or are you not content? And if you're not content, what are you prepared to do about it? It's so hard to benchmark against other people, because even though we appear to be in a very visual and transparent world, it's actually not that transparent. What you see about people's life in the curated world, for example, of social media, can often be quite a long way away from what the reality looks like. So if you're benchmarking against someone that's portraying this beautifully curated life on social media, that may not be the reality. They could be up to the back wheels in debt. So I think finding a mentor is actually quite useful in this, because if you've got someone that's a money coach or a mentor, they're going to tell you as it is, as opposed to maybe what you want to hear. They're going to give it you on a more factual basis, and it's going to enable you to be quite objective as to, okay, relatively speaking, where am I in life? Am I doing quite well, or am I suffering not the compounded interest, but the opposite, the drift, where I'm further away from where I need to be? And if I am, rather than crazy stuff, what action steps can I take today that'll start correcting the course? Because the earlier you correct the course, the earlier you get back on time. The only time it really becomes challenging is if you leave your run so late. To get back on course, you do have to do crazy high risk stuff, probably at a time in life that you shouldn't really be doing that anyway. And again, you know, your 30s is, man, it's as I'm sure you'll look forward to. It's a great decade if you've taken the time to understand the game that you're playing, what the rules are. And the rules are, time is an asset until it's working against you. So grab a hold of it, put your team jersey on it, get it working for you. 2, spend less than what you earn. So you're constantly saving. And when you save, get that savings working for you in one way, shape or form. You know, I mentioned in passing my sister-in-law, who, whilst working for Queensland Health, bought a property. You go, oh, great. So she's got a mortgage. And do you know what? Every time she pulled a shift of overtime, or every time she's babysat for us and we've paid her, that money goes straight into the mortgage account and getting paid off.
The interest down.
So she's barely got a mortgage now.
Yeah.
And it's like she has not had a high paying job. Nurses know what they earn. It is not a high paying job yet. She's been able to do it. She did it here on the Gold Coast, and now she's done the same thing in Byron Bay with her new property. So it is possible, but you've got to have the discipline to do that. Yet how easy would it be to go, oh great, just got paid $200 of overtime here. What are we going to do? Let's go and have a good night out and celebrate. And it's like, you can do that and you get that short-term hit. The long-term consequence is having to pay debt or not even being in the property market. So it's possible to do that. So, you know, it's such a confronting and important time, because, you know, why are we talking about people in their 30s and why it's important? Because I think it's actually the pivot point. If you can go through your 30s and have your financial health in good order and growing nicely with those good financial habits paid in, life is going to go on track for you, and you're going to have a great life financially as you go on through. If you haven't got to grips with it in your 30s, take action now and get on top of it. The worst thing you can do if you're in your 30s, you go, I'll get around to it. Or, none of this sounds fun. I'll get around to it one day, someday life will look after me. You get to your 40s, you've missed a whole decade of having time working for you. And now you're at the stage where you're chasing a game, and chasing it is not the way you want to play the game of life.
Absolutely. AB, sage advice, and hopefully anyone in their 30s has listened to this. If you're like me, late in your 20s, then take notes.
There it is.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
There you have it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.